be a part of a really exciting and almost unprecedented election. We knew that there would be a lot of interest in his seat, but I don't think any of us could have predicted just how many candidates ended up filing. As I watched the field grow all week on the auditor's website, I half expected to see Ross Perot throw his hat in the ring. Seemed like everyone else had, so why not?
That's myself.
So our primary ballot will have a even dozen candidates to choose from, of whom 8 are Republicans. We've invited them all to join us tonight and tell us a little about themselves, who they are, what they stand for, and why we should vote for them. I'm sure we'll learn a lot about them, hopefully enough to make an informed choice in August. But before they begin, I'd like to tell you a little about the place they're seeking to represent, the place we all call home, the 4th Congressional District of the great state of Washington. Our district includes all or part of 8 counties and stretches from the Columbia River to the Canadian border. The landscape is diverse and beautiful, ranging from our own semi-arid desert to the orchard-covered Yakima Valley to the dense mountains of the Okanagan. The person we choose will be representing no less than 695,538 of us as of April 1st, 2013. We are now the largest district by area in the state of Washington, and at 19,600 square miles, we're larger than 10 states, including Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Vermont and New Hampshire combined. Yeah. The person seeking to represent the interests of such a huge and diverse area all the way across the country and the other Washington should take this responsibility very seriously and never take for granted the trust we're placing in them by giving them the most valuable thing that we possess as American citizens, our vote. I feel fortunate to have grown up here, blessed to be raising my family here, and hopeful that I will continue to have one of the best representatives in the country serving me come next January. One of the people speaking tonight will most surely be that person. So without further delay, let's hear what they have to say. Brenda Chilton, the county auditor here in Benton County, is going to be keeping time for us. And I'm sure all of you candidates are well aware that she's in charge of counting the primary votes. So please don't go over when you see her give a high sign. That'll mean you have 30 seconds left. So like Nancy said, the candidates did draw numbers when they arrived. So our first speaker tonight is going to be Dan Newhouse. Dan is a farmer from the Sunnyside area where he served 4 terms as a state representative. And from 2009 to 2013, he was also the director of the Washington State Department of Agriculture. So please welcome Dan.
Thank you very much, Karina. Thank you, everybody, for coming. What a great turnout. I'll try to get out of the way of people's food coming out to you. Great opportunity to be here and introduce myself. You get to know some of the people that are running for office. My name is Dan Newhouse. I live in what I thought was the lower Yakima Valley, although maybe you could argue that we're in the lower Yakima Valley now. Been there my whole life. My wife, Carol, and I have raised our 2 kids in Sunnyside. In fact, last week we just celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary. So that's a great thing. I've been involved in my community my whole life. Been active in my church, been active in my associations around the community. I was elected 4 times in the Washington State House of Representatives, and as Karina said, also served 4 years as your Director of Agriculture for the state of Washington. But really what you need to know about me and how I would approach some of the issues that are important to Central Washington, the 4th District, is that I'm a farmer. I learned many of life's valuable lessons raising hops, tree fruit, grapes, alfalfa, learning to work hard, learning the value of putting effort into something and getting a return at the end of the year and hopefully getting paid for it shortly thereafter. So what did I learn? I learned a lot of things. I learned that sometimes it's better to fix something than to replace it with something that's unproven and more expensive. Kind of reminds me of Obamacare today. There's a lot of problems with the Affordable Care Act, but I hear up and down the district that it is not the solution that people are looking for. I think it's time that we regroup and rebuild what was a healthcare system that arguably needed to be changed. But we need solutions that will give people the power that they need to have as a relates to their personal health care, that put that doctor-patient relationship back to work. On the farm, I also learned that it's important to take care of your natural resources, your air, your land, and your water. I've worked my whole professional life on trying to secure more water for the arid central Washington area, and I will continue to do that and make sure that the federal government is a good partnership in that work. I've also learned a lot of things about people. That you need to be a good neighbor with people that sometimes you may not like and you don't agree with. When Governor Gregoire asked me to be the Director of Agriculture, I took that to heart. I thought, where would it best be for a Republican, but in the middle of a Democratic administration that admittedly knew hardly anything about agriculture? While I was there in some of the midst of the worst recession we've seen in 80 years, I was able to stave off tax increases on the agriculture community. And also, while I was the Director of Agriculture, our exports grew to record levels. Things that I'm very, very, very proud of. I also learned on the farm that if you ignore something, that doesn't mean it's going to go away. We've got some problems in this country that demand attention. Immigration, for one, is a huge thing. Another thing is our debt. Our spiraling debt is out of control and is putting us in a very precarious position in the future. So I think my experience as a business person in public policy, getting things done in the public sector, puts me in a good position to represent you, and I take that representation very, very seriously, let me tell you that. It's a big job, a big commitment, but I think I'm ready for it, and I want to be here to accomplish it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Maybe down there.
Our next speaker is going to be Gavin Syme. Gavin is a filmmaker and photographer from the Ephrata area. And I'm going to let him tell you the rest of the things about himself. Just trying to make my way. So welcome, Gavin.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you for all coming tonight. My name's Gavin Syme, as you just heard, and I'm running for Congress because America is losing its freedom and it's losing its jobs. And I'm focused on restoring those and working to restore those by consistent constitutional voting and trying to get our Congress back to the intents that the framers laid out for us. We need a Congress that will get legal. We're seeing consistent overreach from the federal government in almost every area of our nation and of our lives. And the reason that I challenged Doc Hastings back in December on this was my concerns over the constitutional issues, and you'll hear that come up a lot. I always have one of these in my pocket, and when I'm in Congress, out on the floor there, you'll know that I'm reading the same document you are back home. Because when we're talking about a federal office, the only mandate for the federal representatives is that Constitution. And the problem is we look at all these things throughout the country and all the things that Congress has got their fingers in, like Obamacare, like you name it. I'm sure you can think of half a dozen right now that they're not supposed to be in. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution and the 10th Amendment tells the Congress, here's what you can do. And the 10th Amendment says, by the way, that's all you're allowed to do. Now, it's interesting because we have so many issues that come up. And I've been campaigning now for quite a while and taking all kinds of questions, and we have a lot of issues. We have a lot of problems in America. And yet if we come back to the simple foundations of our Constitution, the Republican principles that made this nation great, we come back to a foundation that says, here's what the government can do and what it can't. And when we take the federal government out of that, when we take this large, uncontrollable body and we take the overreach out of their hands, and then we let these issues, like healthcare, like our farms, our families, we bring that back to the state level, and we put it where it belongs. The timer back there, if you can just wave your hand when I have a minute, because I can wrap up whenever I need to. I'm eager for the questions. I think it's going to be interesting tonight. It's sure turned into quite a field of candidates, and it's going to be a fascinating election year. And I hope we have some really rousing debates, because that's something we need a little more of in America, is a good debate now and then. But we need to deal with issues. We need to deal with the deficit. We have $17 trillion of national debt that will not be fixed by larger government. It will not be fixed by more spending. It will not be fixed by more of the same. Congress needs to get legal. The Constitution tells the Congress what they are allowed to do. And we need to put them back in the role that the framers intended. A lot of people have spilled their blood to give us America. The framers spilled their blood and they expected us Americans to be the sentinels of that liberty. And I hate to say it, but I think we failed at that. I think we've allowed the federal government to become far too large. We've allowed them to do far more things than they were intended to do, and we need to put the government back in their place and say, we the people are the law in this land. This is our republic, and we will hold you accountable. So when I'm in Washington, I will be accountable, and I will account for each and every vote I make on the floor, and I will vote consistently and resolutely with this document right here. Because any representative that does anything otherwise is not qualified to be in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. And just so the rest of our speakers know, Brenda will give you the sign. We have 30 seconds left. I don't want to rob anybody.
I've been doing it at 1 minute.
Is that what, you guys all good with that? Okay, when you got 1 minute left, okay? Our next speaker is going to be George Seacott. George is an attorney from Kennewick. He specializes in healthcare and retirement law. So please welcome George.
Is it okay to stand here, or do we need to stand up there? Darwin, crowd up there. Say that again?
Get away from the window.
Away from the window. Okay, thanks.
There, that one. Oh, it looks like a shadow.
Thank you all for coming. I know that y'all have got busy schedules and there's a lot of things to do. And so to come out here to listen to candidates who are seeking to represent you is kind and admirable on your part, and I appreciate all of you being here. Appreciate the Tri-State Republican women. I am a Republican, but I don't meet the other criteria for eligibility. But I've gotten to know them reasonably well since February, and I've enjoyed the monthly meetings and get-togethers here. I'd like to read to you, as I felt compelled to run this race, I learned about it Doc announced on the 13th that he was retiring. For years, fortunately, I actually had told a few friends that when Doc retires someday, I think I'd like to run for his spot. So there are some folks who, if put under oath, could testify that this was not a last-minute idea on my part. But as the reality came to the fruition, and as I strove to put into words the feelings that I felt, the patriotism that I felt, the responsibility that I feel, and the love for my family that I feel, it was a difficult process. And so I've learned in life that sometimes if you have a mission statement, it can help you. So I drafted this mission statement. And you'll see it's just a screenshot of my computer that I printed off so I could remember, because of all the things that I have remembered, you think I've memorized this, but I still have it there so that I can read it periodically throughout the day to keep myself on the right track. And let me read it to you. I will represent Central Washington with all of my God-given ability, applying my experience as a husband, father, attorney, and successful business leader. In Congress, I will remain humble, focused on results, and not on personal promotion. I will focus solely on bringing about real improvement for our district and for our nation. Through personal example, I will strive to increase civility, honor faith and family, and respect the U.S. Constitution. I will work to match the skill with which Doc Hastings represented us, and I will seek to improve upon his outstanding record. Now, I just a minute ago almost made a critical mistake. I used to have to conduct church meetings on a regular basis, and I learned I never looked at the row with my wife and children in the row, because I have such strong emotional feelings for them. It's sometimes not a pretty sight when I look at them. I just caught my wife's eye, and we're not looking over in that corner of the room again. I love her a lot, and I need to keep those emotions inside. So let me tell you, how am I going to achieve this mission statement? I agree with a lot of things that some of the other candidates have said. We do have a lot of challenges, we have a lot of problems. What I have to offer you is that over my career, I have not been in public service to elected office, but I've been in public service raising a great family. I've got 7 kids. Every single one of them is an outstanding young man or young woman. One of them's married now. She's going to be having kids of her own soon. 1 minute left. By raising these kids, I have an obligation to make the world a better place for them. I'm going to strive to do that for you by sharing with the people the skills that I've developed as an attorney. These are skills that can help solve the Obamacare crisis. Many folks say it's good, it's bad, repeal it. I really do know it inside and out, and I can participate in a meaningful way that no one else can. I can participate in balancing the budget, because half the budget is retirement and healthcare spending. These are things I've been helping employers do my whole career, is get those spending costs under control. I can deal with those. Third, I went to a law school that was founded for the express purpose of training leaders to defend the Constitution. I understand the Constitution at a very high level. I've been trained to do that, and I would love to work with you all to restore that, particularly our first freedom in the First Amendment, which is the free exercise of religion. It's under attack in this country right now, and we need people to stand up for it in a legal way. Yes, Congress does need to be more legal, and we need folks trained in law who can get that. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Our next speaker is going to be Gordon Allen Cross of Ellensburg. He's an organic farmer and alternative energy researcher. So please welcome Gordon.
My name is Gordon Allen Cross, and my name is not a stranger to your ballot. Last week, my name was put on the federal ballot for the 8th time in the last 16 years. It's one of the most fundamental rights we have in America. And the First Amendment has been crucified in this nation. We are upside down to the point where we can't even function. What are some of the issues? Well, you can list them all day long. I think the root of the problem is that General George Washington's quarter coin is only worth one red-headed Lincoln penny today. When I first started running to pay off a $4 trillion debt in 1998, we were $4 trillion. We've essentially voted $1 trillion a year since. The U.S. Supreme Court a month ago ordered the caps off of billionaires to allow monies to be entrenched in incumbents in the Senate and the House, untold amounts of money. So that just supports monopoly, censorship, corruption, conspiracy, and auction. And these things are critical. And some people fall out of races because how much race can they afford, how much justice can you afford? And it's just not right that some man has to cut a piece of his arm off just to be on a ballot. My thoughts are your laws aren't worth the rice it took to make the paper nor the soya bean it took to make the print if you don't have any money to enforce the law. I stand for everything which is great about this country. I've had a great education, and I'll tell you, agriculture's been my background. I've raised horses. I remember the day when I could grow a bale of hay and make the money at selling it $1 a bale. Diesel at 11 cents a gallon with an embargo back in '73. I've raised horses, cattle, hay. I have an extensive background in agriculture and forestation, from planting the trees to putting them out when they're on fire to responsible logging. It's a renewable resource. I have a background in fruit. I was recruited 2 decades ago to be a cartographer for the Ministries of Fisheries, Forestries, and Agriculture of Japan, and the host of their botanist. And our team was instrumental in bringing down a 17-year embargo for apples to Japan. I've served in the military. I ran an airfield. I know every facet. From the bottom to the top, from putting the air stock up, we name it. But what I say is, we need to abolish all federal, state, and local taxes, fees, write-off loopholes, and shelters. When you earn $1, you get 10%. Federal, state, and local equal third. There's 100% left over for free speech. On our economy, that'd be 10 billion, 12 million, so that your youth could have voice and to have the same voice as the incumbent and get elected on their blueprint, roadmap, and vision, instead of how much money can they afford to get elected. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gordon. Our next speaker is going to be Kevin Midbust. Kevin is a Rite Aid supervisor from right here in the Tri-Cities in Richland, so please welcome Kevin.
I'm Kevin Midbust. I should tell y'all I'm pretty nervous about this. I don't usually public speak at all. Basically, I'm running because I'm the only guy I can trust to be 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. You know, I came in here thinking, oh, this will be fun. Women. Yeah, I just work as, I'm not a politician, I'm not someone who's had experience being a politician, I'm just a regular working guy. Figured I might be, you know, the kind of person that, you know, well, most regular people would appreciate, maybe they'd like me or not, but, you know, basically I don't believe that the government should be in pretty much most, if not all, the things in our lives. You know, like health care, there should be no government in there. You know, some of the things that might be scary for like the Republicans is, you know, what do we do about things like our like Medicare and Social Security, and I've seen things like we should, you know, move it to privatization, when what we should be saying is, well, we do already have privatization of Social Security. It's called investment, your own investment and savings. Because, you know, as I'm one of those crazy people that actually saves money, I'm actually spending my own money on my candidacy right now. I can't really stand debt at all. It just seems like, you know, some form of slavery to me, because, you know, you owe someone. I don't believe in making the public have to, you know, live with all this debt. In general, I'm, you know, the person that's pretty much going to vote no for all legislation. You know, I'd repeal pretty much anything if the vote came up for it. I'm not necessarily going to go on a whole mission to go repeal all laws, but yeah. Let's see. Yeah, you can tell I'm bad at this. Home in. Yeah, I'm kind of a person that takes in information and I'm always processing it in my mind, trying to figure out like the best option to do something. You know, what are the tough issues? You know, what do people say about it? How can I, you know, take it to where I can say, you know, maybe we can do it your way, but we don't have to force everyone to do it your way. And, you know, I'm kind of a person that, you know, I'll speak to people on the other side, I'll debate them, or, you know, have discussions, because, you know, if our country is going to be run in a certain way, you know, let's have a discussion about it. Let's decide if it's really what we want to, you know, not, maybe we need, if we're not going to follow the Constitution, let's have a discussion. Done. Thanks.
I just want to tell you, I thought you did a really good job. It is really difficult to get up here. And
Yeah.
it's also one of the nicest things any of our speakers has said about our group, that you thought we'd be fun. We are pretty fun. Our next speaker is Janaea Holmquist Newbury of Moses Lake. She has served as a representative for the 13th District, and she is currently serving as the 13th District State Senator. So please welcome Janaea.
I'm actually going to get out of the server's ways. I'm going to go the other side. I've been a server before, so yeah.
Well, good evening. I'm Senator Janaea Holmquist, and what an honor it is to join you here this evening. And I'd like to start off by thanking each and every one of you for the role that you play in promoting our Republican Party and principles. We couldn't do it without you. Now, I'm not sure, does anyone here know the last time a female represented us in the 4th Congressional District? Well, we got a couple. Yes. Okay, so it was Catherine May in 1959, and she served us to 71, and it's been a while, folks. And I've got to say that I feel so honored and blessed to have a lot of horsepower from our Republican women throughout the 4th Congressional District. I've got a lot of folks on board, including Linda Bishop. She is the president of the Grant County Republican Women. I've got Charlene Upton, who is our treasurer, and she's the president of the Yakima Republican Women. And then, of course, you know your very own Joyce Matthews, who is my campaign manager. So I'm feeling very, very blessed. And I'm here to earn your support to be your next Congresswoman in the 4th Congressional District. And what you gain with me as a candidate is that proven track record to back up my promises and my commitments and my Republican ideals and ideas. I've been working hard on your behalf in the legislature to protect you, your wallets, and your rights. So let's talk a little bit about wallets. Who here thinks that we need to make sure there's more folks in Congress that do the same things as you and I do? Balance a checkbook and live within their means. Yeah, I agree with you. I think we need more of those. I was pleased to be the only state senator, currently your only state senator, who has never voted for a tax increase on Washington citizens. And above and beyond that, I was really happy to help lead the charge to adopt a balanced budget amendment for our state. We're the first state in the nation to have a 4-year constitutional balanced budget amendment. And if we can get it done in liberal Washington state, folks, we can get it accomplished at the federal level, and you can count on me. We need tax reform. We've got a fair tax guru right here in our presence. And now let's skip to rights. Protecting your rights, whether it be your property rights, your constitutional rights, your personal liberties. I've got that proven track record at the state level, and you can count on me to do the same at the federal level. Now, speaking of infringing on your personal liberties and your wallets all in one foul swoop, let's talk a second about Obamacare. We need to repeal it, replace it, and restore the private insurance market with those common sense, consumer-driven solutions.
Amen.
And we can get it done. Now, one of my personal passions as the chair of the Commerce and Labor Committee is our business climate, our economy, private sector job creation, and economic development. And not only am I the business leader for our Senate Republican caucus, but I grew up on a farm. So I know firsthand how government is clearly overreaching and how we need to lift the government red tape so that employers can invest their money in employing Washingtonians instead of right now being forced to throw it out the window. Regardless of the issue, what you gain with me is a proven track record to back up my promises and my commitments. And I've also been able to show you that you can stand strong on our core principles, yet still get things accomplished. And I haven't always been the chair. Even in a super minority status, I was able to reach across the aisle and improve our business climate with historic workers' comp reform. I've been toe-to-toe with Governors Gregoire and Inslee. I am the most prepared to bring the battle to Pelosi and President Obama and get them to come along to our ideals instead of being force-fed their agenda. We have 30 seconds. Done? I would appreciate your support. Thank you. God bless.
Rockwell, and he's far away, so hang on 1 second. Glenn has an economic development company. He's from the Ritzville area. So please welcome Glenn.
I came prepared because I thought there were going to be a podium. I came prepared this time. So I was actually in Congress November 8th, 2009 when the health bill passed Congress. And I can tell you it was total chaos. But anyway, I'll get back to what I was saying here. What I think we need to do in this country is we need to take control of our nation and our state. And I will be honored to serve you and will not accept a penny for my salary or any pension. It's a service, you know, something, an honor when people bestow upon you. And I'll go back to Congress if I'm elected, and I will not accept anything. I swear to God Almighty and Jesus Christ and to the voters and everyone in this room, I will vote for impeachment, throw Obama into prison. That's exactly where he needs to be. And I will regain total control of our banking system. Our banking system was stolen in 1913. It was because the President Wilson at the time frame, they said at the time frame he was given a campaign contribution. Well, that's political wordage for he was paid off to pass some secret ballot in Christmas Eve. We will redesign the voting system in America to include national verifiable paper printed printouts. That's something that was taken out of the voting system, and we absolutely have to go back to that. If you go to the Diebold, if you go to my website, it'll be published shortly. If you'll look at the YouTube videos that are there, it explains how corrupt the system is. And it also explains who has gone to Congress and how they paid to get to Congress. And I regret to say that there's actually one Republican congressman from Florida that's paid to have that done. My pledge to you is if I am elected to go to Congress, this project here is long overdue. I grew up in Yakima. I know the Yakima Valley very well. I lived in Sunnyside. My son was born in Sunnyside. I know Sunnyside very well also. I was came down to this area in 1954-55 time frame on a weekend trip to see what the area looked like. And without this project here, it was put into place by Franklin Roosevelt, which is totally different than Obama. Obama came to this country to destroy us. And his original employer was Henry Kissinger. And if you know anything about Henry Kissinger, you'll know that he came here, he was a double agent, and he worked as the Secretary of War, and he was actually a double agent. Anyway, I can't say enough about him in 4 minutes. He's killed literally millions of people. This is a project that I'll bring here. Ever since I was a kid coming down here, it's between irrigation and farming that has built our state and our nation, our country into what it is today, along with Hanford. This country, this town, and this region here didn't look like this back in the 50s. My pledges to you is I will work for you, period. I will put all my salary into a trust account, and if I do or don't succeed in bringing the Washington State the second largest construction project in 69 years, those monies will be given out yearly to college students who apply for college grants and will attain a degree in engineering and political science. Who also agreed to work for the Washington State Economic Development Corp, which is a non-profit corporation, for a period of 5 years. I think what we need to do as a country, we talk too much, and I can't say enough about Clint here. I voted for him when he was running against Senator Murray. He and I, even though he's much taller than I am, that he's like a tree when he stands next to me. But anyway, we both have run for office several times. And, you know, only winners keep coming back, keep coming back. I used to fight when I was younger, and you learn that you have to come back on politics. So anyway, I would appreciate if you consider voting for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, and that brings us to our final speaker of the night, who is Clint Didier, and he is a farmer and small business owner from Eltopia. And I'm sure you've all heard about his career in Major League Baseball, so here's Clint.
It was football. That's okay. I always wanted to play baseball. That's okay. Don't feel bad. Hey, it happens to the best of us. Yes, I am. I'm from Eltopia, that was once called Hell to Pay. And I'm not kidding you. When they put the railroad ties and the irons down and they were driving the spikes, it was 117 degrees. And those railroad workers said they had to go through hell to get their paycheck. They named it Hell to Pay. Well, right here in Eltopia, on this map, my mom and dad broke this ground open back in '54. That first year they lived in a tent. Because of the GI Bill, they had to live on the ground or they lost their rights to it. My dad served in the Korean conflict. As you know, as you well know, in the desert you get extreme heat and you get extreme cold. That first winter, my dad had 2 wood stoves in that tent. My 2 older siblings were born. I was just a glimmer in my dad's eye at that time. But that winter got to be 19 below zero. And Dad stayed up all night stoking those wood stoves. That morning he got up and he grabbed that coffee pot. It was 5:30, just got done stocking the wood stoves, grabbed the coffee pot off the wood stove, tried to pour himself a cup of coffee and nothing came out. He took the lid off and looked inside and that coffee had slushed in the pot on the stove. And if he had only known that God had blessed him with the first coffee slushy, we could have been rich. But that's what I was brought up with, a farm life. My wife and I have been married 32 years. We've got 4 children. We've got 3 grandchildren. And when I held that grandson here a couple of months ago, I looked at him and he was falling asleep and his eyes would open and he'd look at me and he'd smile and then I started to think about his future and this financial mess we're in. They're spending us into an oblivion. They're spending us into bankruptcy. If we don't get our financial house in order, folks, we will not be America anymore.
Amen. Right.
We have to get this thing. And we can't afford Obamacare. Anybody says to repeal, replace, or they can fix it, we're allowing the government to get into our medical life, our private medical life. They're nowhere supposed to be in that. Government is not supposed to be in our medical life. They're not supposed to be in the size of our toilets or our light bulbs either, but they are. For crying out loud, this government is too big. That's why I'm running. I'm a farmer. I'm a citizen statesman. I'm going to be your next congressman. And I'm going to go back to D.C. and I'm going to help move the ball down the field. The Republicans, we're going to take that ball and we're going to move it down the field. We're going to get first downs and we're going to score. We're going to get this government back under control. We're going to limit it in its size and scope. We're going to start looking at every agency that was created by executive order, by presidents with R's and D's, and start defunding those agencies. Those are the bills I'm going to put forward. Start to get these agencies off our back.
Amen.
Here's the thing, folks. In the second half of the Declaration, our founding fathers stated one of the biggest abuses of the king was he erected a multitude of new offices and sent out his hither swarm of officers to harass the people and to suck out their substance. Is that not what's going on in America today? You look at Nevada, you look everywhere. They are arming themselves to come after we, the people, the first 3 words of the most powerful document in all of mankind. This is our country. We just got to have the courage and the fortitude to take it back. Thank you. Clint Didier for Congress, the number 4. Look me up on the website. Thank you very much for having this forum tonight. And God bless America by Americans blessing God.
Thank you, Clint. Hey, that was great. great. I think we all really learned a lot about all of you tonight, and we just so appreciate all 8 of you making the effort to get to this meeting tonight. Not everybody was local, and I mean, it's just an honor, really it is, to our club that you all turned out, and we're really excited to, hopefully 2 of you are going to make it through in the primary. I'm sure all of you are hoping that as well. That would be great, and I think you've really helped all of us to make some good choices. So we're going to open it up to questions from anyone. We're going to change things a little because I think the servers are still working right here. So if all the candidates want to head towards the back to the pool table, we're going to move a bench if you need to sit. If you feel more comfortable standing, then go ahead and do that. So if you have a question for any of the speakers tonight, raise your hand and I'm going to try and get around with the microphone. And you can address it to any of them, to all of them, to 2 or 3 of them. It's this is just completely open, and they will go ahead and answer your questions. So as soon as they all assemble back there. And just be patient if, I'll try and get to everybody as quickly as I can when we see the hands go up. So does anybody have a question for any of our candidates?
Hi, I'm Roy Becker. I'm one of the PCOs here in Benton County. My question deals with teachers, only teachers. I don't care about you. Under Common Core, Department of Education wants their evaluations tied to the students' scores. Whoever takes the mantle on this, I don't care. What are we going to do with the teachers that are battling those kids that are having a hard time learning, such as the mildly retarded, the autism kid? Because if you tie it all together under one head, somebody's going to be losing their job. So my question is, what are you going to do with Common Core? And what are you going to do with teacher evaluation that follows it? So, anybody raise their hand? You got to get it.
And who'd like to answer that? And if more than one of you want to answer it, just keep passing the microphone down because we have some time.
Hey, thank you. That's a good question to bring up. Common Core is an atrocity against our education. And it's not something that should be in our schools. It's not something we should tolerate from the federal government. But let me go back a little further because there is a solution, and sometimes the most effective solutions are the most simple solutions. I have a wife, I have 3 kids, and I'm looking at where they're at. I'm looking at how the federal government is involved in all these things and collecting all this information, and I'm not willing to send my children to a school where the federal government is in control of that degree. Now, I was raised homeschooled, and we homeschool, and I firmly believe that people, parents, should have the right to educate their children as they see fit. But the main thing on the federal level goes back to Article 1, Section 8 in the 10th Amendment. The Department of Education has no constitutional right whatsoever to exist. Now, it's interesting because this is becoming more and more accepted. I talk to a lot of teachers, and they recognize that the Department of Education is doing nothing but infringing on our education. So rather than say, how do we fix Common Core, how do we address the issues with it, the issue with Common Core is the entirety of Common Core. The federal government should not be involved in our education. They shouldn't be passing bills that control our education and essentially strong-arm the states into following along with the way they want our children educated. We need to educate our children the way we see fit. It's time for the government to get out of our faith, our families, and our freedom. So we need to end the Department of Education, and we need to repeal, in the shorter sense, we need to repeal Common Core and just stop it. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to respond to that question?
I'll be quick. Common Core, get it out of America, get the United Nations out of the United States, get the United States out of the United Nations, because that's where Common Core came from. Abolish the Department of Education, give it back to the states, just like there's 8 candidates here. Competition brings out the best in everyone. Create competition. We're going to need teachers for all the students. So there will be a need for all of them. Give it back to the states. The states will find the teachers for the special needs children, and then they'll find the competition to educate everyone.
You guys just keep passing it down if you reach your hand out if you want to answer that question.
Well, I agree also with these two candidates to abolish the Department of Education. And the United States is the United Nations. Without the United States, there is no United Nations. We need to send what's the remnants of them back to Brussels. And within education, I think that we need to stop the doctrine of teaching these kids from K through university and trade schools how to learn how to follow, and start the doctrine of teaching them how to think to lead.
Well, you know, pretty much government shouldn't be allowed to force you to send your kids to school. That's pretty much where I stand. I feel the best way, you know, to rate teachers or decide if a teacher's doing a good job, well, if your parent can just take your kid out of their class or whatever, you know, soon that teacher may not have any students, so it's like, maybe that teacher's not doing such a good job. You know, that's one of the things. Just have, you know, privatization of schooling and such. You know, I mean, you take the money away from bad teachers, the ones that are. If your kid's not getting educated, maybe you need to find a different school or a different, or maybe you want to homeschool or whatever. You know, the government shouldn't. I mean, the government shouldn't even be decided on what you need to teach your children. I mean, you know, thanks.
You did a good job. I'm totally against Common Core. What I find totally confusing about it is you have people in the Democrat-Republican Party pushing it, but what we don't realize is that they're all on the same team. I study history. I've done it for many, many years. We all know that Obama's history has been totally erased. Well, there's other people who have lived from the Republican Party that their history has been totally erased too. We have two choices on this next presidential election: Hillary and Jeb Bush. That's what is being promoted. Jeb Bush is over there and he's promoting Common Core, and so is Hillary. They're part of the same team. I totally agree we need to get government out of education and return it to the states. That's my position.
The reason we have public education in America is because the citizens are the sovereign of this country. And our founders knew that to have an educated sovereign, we needed public education. The European nations that most of our original founders came from didn't have public education. So public education is a uniquely American system. The reason we have Common Core is because the feds are investing so many dollars in public education that they wanted to be able to answer and try to provide some type of system to say we're spending those dollars wisely. I think we can all agree that there's been a number of federal systems and none of them have turned out terribly well, because too many young people in this country are still incapable of doing the essential things as to why we have public schools, which is to be educated voters, participating in meaningful ways in this democracy. And it's a critical problem. Our democracy is not going in the right direction if we don't have a generation that's not apathetic, that cares more about governance by the people than they care about who the latest celebrity is. And so if the system's failing, is there time for experimentation? Yeah, there is. And that's the great thing about our federalist system. We've got two systems of government in each state. You've got the feds and you've got the states. I agree that education control should be pushed down to the states. Then you've got 50 different experimentation processes to find out what works best. When we try a top-down approach to unify things, I realize they're the best of intentions, but I think we can look at the results and we can all agree that they're suboptimal. So we do need to move that control back to the states. When we get rid of that federal funding, if states are going to have to make up that funding, where does it come from? Generally it comes from property taxes. So you're going to see that. So the citizens aren't going to enjoy a particularly net savings, even if they save some federal income tax, and actually probably they wouldn't lose federal income tax because that might just be a way to get us out of our hole. So they're not going to save any federal income tax, and they're likely going to have greater state or local taxes to fund the education, and that's the natural consequence. So you've just got to think through this, and I'm not opposed to that, but you've got to realize that's the logical consequence. You cut the feds out, you cut out the federal funding. That money's got to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from state and local taxes. Be prepared for that. And I am, you just have to understand that. The final question was, how do you judge teacher quality? I would just like to bring us together with the common agreement that education is about the children, not about the teachers. And so whatever we do in judging teacher quality, our #1 concern has to be based on the children that they're teaching. That's kind of harsh sometimes. Nobody likes to tell anybody they're doing a poor job. If you've ever been, I own a business. I've had some people that have done really well, Scott, and I've had some people who haven't done so well and I've had to let them go, and it stinks. It's horrible giving a poor performance review. And yet, you know, put on your big boy pants and stand up, or your big girl pants and stand up. That's what we've got to do. So we do have to find ways to judge teachers based purely on the achievements of their kids. More than I should have taken, thank you.
I'll try to be brief, but I think the Common Core standards that are being promoted currently is just the next soup du jour of top-down federal control in our education system. We've seen too many times where that kind of a control system just does not work. It's not efficient. It doesn't relate to the needs at the local level, where I think the parents, the teachers, certainly the school boards have a much better idea of what's important for educating our children. The state of Washington maybe doesn't have a sterling track record, but I certainly think that we can do much better having local control over our education, much better job we can do than the federal government can do from 3,000 miles away. As far as it comes to teacher evaluations, I break with the union philosophy on this. I absolutely think that we need to have some way of determining the good teachers and determining who are not the good teachers. It's too important for our children to be stuck in a classroom, and I know this from experience from my own kids, with teachers that are not qualified and are not good enough to be leading our children down their educational path. Does it have to be just test scores? I think that could be one of the parameters used. Certainly progress by the student has to be evaluated on an individual level, but I certainly believe that we need some way to measure the effectiveness of our teachers.
Well, just a reminder of why I'm running to be your next Congresswoman in the 4th is that I've got an 18-month son. His name is Makayo, and I want to ensure that he and your children and your grandchildren have the same opportunities at the American dream as you and I have had. And actually, I think we should be striving that they have better and greater opportunities. And part of the American dream is the ability to go and get an education. And what I've been able to do in my proven track record for you at the state level is stand up for getting rid of unfunded mandates, pushing for the money to follow the student and the child instead of the school. And this year, what happened in the teacher evaluation issue and why some folks are talking about it is the federal government, when your state legislature went ahead and bought into the Common Core, and by the way, I oppose that on the record. But when they did, this year the federal government said, okay guys, you have to do A, B, or C, and one of those options was to do a teacher evaluation. Well, we were able to pass it on a bipartisan fashion out of the Senate, and the House Democrats killed it. So what happened is we lost our No Child Left Behind money. And that's one thing I want to mention too, and you guys have great legislators here locally, but a big part of this problem is the fact that the federal government, what does the federal government do when they want to force a one-size cookie cutter on whether it be your business climate or your education system? What they do is they put a little carrot out there. Money, money. And more times than not, I think that your local elected officials here at the state of Washington, they need to stand up, and sometimes taking the money isn't worth all the strings attached. And in this case, that's exactly what happened with Common Core, is that there's too many darn strings attached, and now we're seeing the repercussions of us leaving our No Child Left Behind dollars that are going to impact the quality of education for our kids. So what you can count on me at the federal level is I'm going to do whatever I can for local control so that you as parents and grandparents at the local level can educate, and you as teachers can educate instead of the federal government forcing you to treat every child exactly the same with the one-size-fits-all, which never works. And I will push to ensure that the money follows the student instead of the school. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to change our question and answer format just slightly. So we want everybody to have a chance, all of you guys to have a chance to get your questions out. So if you could try and keep your question itself to about 30 seconds, let us know who you're directing it to, And if it is everyone, that's fine. And you guys try and keep your answers brief out of respect for everyone else's time. I would like to say 30 seconds, but I actually feel kind of bad about that. But if you could try and keep it that concise, it would really help us out. So who has another question? Okay. 30 seconds, Bob.
Okay, what are you guys gonna do about the EPA and their illegal land grab? That would be directed mostly at the farmers, I guess.
Okay, the farmers. So we have Clint. Okay, everybody's a farmer. All right, here you go.
All right, here we go. We got the EPA. It was created December 2nd, 1970 by who? Richard Nixon with an R by his name. Executive order. These are one of the agencies that I'm talking about. I'm gonna defund them. Put bills up there, hopefully we'll get the support, get enough people back there, we start pulling their funds, eventually get rid of them, because they do not have no authority over you and I. They were created by the executive order, not our elected representation.
I think we're spot on with that. The EPA is unconstitutional. We need to defund them entirely in the organization. These agencies like this are why we have $17 trillion in national debt. We need to get responsible, and we need to end the EPA, along with many others, but absolutely no EPA. The federal government has no authority to be involved in that.
Let's take a look where the fingers of the EPA are in every community in this entire land.
Yeah, the EPA basically needs to be gone, but you know, realistically, I'm just one person. It's, you know, kind of gonna have to take all of you guys out there to make sure they're not, you know, overreaching and taking people's land, you know, just for their benefit.
I totally agree. You know, when Richard Nixon put that through the executive order, what's weird about history is you find out who his backers are. His backers were the Rockefellers. They held him in reserve, paid him $243,000 so he could run for president. It just happenstance that the Rockefellers are the one pushing the national and one world order government. Anyway, we need to defund it, get rid of it. They were brought in to make everything streamlined, but what they did was tied an anchor around every industry in the nation.
Two comments, first looking back, second looking forward. EPA had a purpose in its time. Rivers were very polluted. We had a great booming economy after World War II, but things were a mess. Our economy has been cleaned up over the past 50 years. It's not as messy as it was then. The problem with government bureaucracies is they have no end date, they have no natural death. And so we all agree that the EPA is far past its prime. It had a purpose in 1970. By and large, it's accomplished those purposes. And so now it is time to shrink it vastly. You know, that's simple. Now looking forward, what are environmentalists looking forward to the future now? You know, the big issue we see is climate change. I find it rather ironic that in the 70s and 80s, environmentalists fought nuclear power with a vengeance and slowed its progression. Well, if we had more nuclear power, we'd have fewer coal-fired plants to generate electricity in this country, and we'd have a lot fewer greenhouse gases. So beware environmentalists. They don't always have they have good intentions, but they don't have the best thinking and analytical ability, quite frankly. And so we've got to keep looking forward with meaningful solutions, not just saying, hey, get rid of the EPA, but say, okay, what are we going to do to protect for the next major issue, which is this climate change push? They're pushing for carbon trading taxes, which is outrageous. And so here locally, what do we have to show? We have to show that nuclear power is a great, safe, reliable generator of electricity. And we can even keep the president happy. They have lots of them in France, okay? So, you know, we can be more like France in one good way. So those are my environmental thoughts for you. Thanks.
I'm going to keep my answer to the question of land acquisition by federal agency. I think that American citizens are tired of government at all levels growing their empire, acquiring more land, taking more land off the tax rolls. I happen to be a neighbor to some state land, and I look right across the river at federal land, federally owned land. So I know from where I speak to be a neighbor to publicly owned land, and I tell you what, not every weed on my farm comes from there, but a lot of them do. They're not managed, they're not kept into the shape that you would be proud of, and I think until they can get a handle on the land that they currently have, they don't need to acquire any more. So that's what I would do. Not just EPA, but every single agency in the country is overreaching when it comes to the ownership of this great land of ours. Thank you.
And I will mention too, just to add on to some of the other ideas we've heard here, a big part of it is public access to your land. And I've been able to be a true champion at our state level and was proud this last budget, believe it or not, we had a no net loss in regards to your accessing your land in our capital budget, and as well as our general fund budget. And I would take that same approach to the federal level. And bottom line, when it comes to, and it's interesting, it was one of our local elected officials, but what you really have to do is follow the purse strings and defund it. But then also, I think we need more checks and balances on their authority. These are unelected bureaucrats that are not accountable to you. So in some cases, when these unelected bureaucrats in these state agencies are making significant rules that have huge impacts, I think it needs to have a check and balance. Like, for example, your congressional delegation should get to vote yes or no on some of those issues. Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, Representative Haler. I'm sure you're really good at keeping your statements in their time limit.
Well, I thought I'd take half an hour. With respect to Hanford, the vitrification plant is being delayed and delayed and delayed by design changes. And those aren't coming from the contractor, they're coming from the Department of Energy. How are you going to bring the Department of Energy to task getting the vit plant going? Because right now, its start date was 2018. Now it's 2020 something, maybe 2030. How are you going to get the DOE to come to the table and start honestly dealing with the issues?
Do you have someone you're addressing that to? Everybody. Okay, I'm going to start with Senator Newbury, since she's had to go last two questions.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think bottom line, what you have to do is the same thing you do on all levels of government, is you have to grab sometimes people by the ear, throw them together in a room and make them talk, and make sure that you've got your local elected leaders right there to lead the discussion. I have a great opportunity to be able to meet with TRIDEC representatives recently, and we'll be going on another Hanford tour. This will continue to be a top priority for me when it comes to economic development and job creation, is ensuring that we have support for the Hanford funding. And then also, I've got to just put a little plug in. I think your hidden gem as well is our national lab here, and I look forward to being able to support them as well. Thanks for the question, Larry.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. That's a tremendously important topic, Hanford cleanup. One of the first things I'm going to do is continue, I believe, what Doc Hastings started with, and get involved with the nuclear caucus. Get together with other members of Congress who have similar situations in their district. There's power in numbers, and we've got to make sure that the federal government maintains its commitment, its absolute obligation to clean up the mess that they left behind. You know, we were happy to participate in winning World War II. Amen. And winning the Cold War. But doggone it, the federal government left a mess behind, and they've got to be sure that they step up and restore our environment to what it was before. Nothing less will be acceptable. I know in this budget situation that we face today, it is going to be tough to continue to get $2 billion a year funneled into the Tri-Cities. I'm going to tell you right up front, it is not going to be easy, but together we can do it. We have the wherewithal, we have the horsepower, we have the whole delegation, and I think joining up with other members of Congress with similar situations is the way to go.
Thanks. The first thing I'm going to have to do to get the DOE to move is to cooperate with a couple of Democrats, our 2 state senators. You know, Doc's done a good job of that, and we're going to have to continue that, because they wield a lot of power, they wield a lot of seniority that none of us in this room are going to have starting next January 3rd when one of us takes office. So we're going to have to build that relationship. Number 2, there is a little bit of PR that needs to happen. Even though Doc's done a great job of bringing dollars to the table, we just got featured in news stories nationwide several weeks back as being the biggest recipient of pork in America. That's not pork. Like Dan said, I didn't see suburban New Jersey step up to refine plutonium to help us win World War II and the Cold War. We did something that nobody else did. Okay? This is not pork, this is deferred military spending. What is the federal government's primary obligation? Provide for the common defense. The citizens of this area did that, we gave our land for that, and we can make a better case. Because isn't it really all about communication when we're fighting for limited budget dollars? If we just say, hey, give me some more pork, please, how convincing is that? If we say, look, we've got deferred military spending here, and as a congressman, I will stand up to the utmost for military defense. We got to strengthen them. Sorry, getting sidetracked. But we've got to portray it properly as deferred military cost spending so we can get them to move. And believe it or not, some lawyers can bring some help here. It's possible that when you try to get government agencies to move, you need some legal maneuvering. And I've actually got I'm going to have a position statement coming out soon on my website about how to restructure the whole federal involvement there to get it done quicker and sooner.
Well, I don't know what else to say. I think they've all hit the nail on the head. And if I go back to Washington, D.C., I will do as Clint has brought up, start defunding these people and get control back to the states. You know, what really happened to me in history when I studied history on November 22nd, 1963, when they killed Kennedy, they not only killed him, they took over the presidency, and then they started centralizing everything back. And what we need to do is reverse that back to the states. And that's the position I'll take from day one, and I will work continuously to do that.
Well, that's government. It doesn't really get things done, it just takes longer. You know, I think basically, you know, I don't necessarily know the answer to it, but I think what we're gonna have to do, because, well, I think they've been building that thing since I moved here back in like 2001, so it's like, you know, we really want the government to build this thing when it's taking 12 years or so, something. But I think, you know, basically what we're gonna have to do, the only thing is have, you know, maybe we should have like a bake sale or something and collect money. I mean, if it's really a problem here, you know, for all of us here, we should all get together and, you know, come up with the money to get this thing finally built and done. That, you know, really, then we don't have to worry about it anymore, you know.
Well, I pointed out most diligently, our money is just a paper tiger. We need to get the taxes straightened out, build that quarter, that's worth a penny back to a quarter, so every check you get at the end of the month is like having 2 years worth of checks. So we can afford to pay these mandates off. And that, like 2 years worth of labor like that would be like having 50 years worth of checks at the pay rate of what the dollar's worth today. We can grow that pie so enormous that the smallest slice one could extract out of that pan, we've earned a fair share for the meager of us out here. We got to get our dollar straight so we can pay for our ideals. It's like faith. It's like the mustard seed. Just let it sit on the shelf, you know. It'll sleep forever. Let's give it some light, some soil, a little bit of water, a little nurture nature.
I like how a lot of these questions tie together, especially with the federal level, and I don't claim to be a Hanford expert. I'm researching more and more all the time. What I do see is that the federal government has to take care of its accountabilities. I also see a lesson here in getting the federal government out of energy in the larger sense, giving the power back to the states. But we have a mess out there. It has to be cleaned up. And we have the federal government who has to fulfill its obligations. I think a lot of that comes back to we need to limit the federal government in all these unconstitutional areas so that we don't have this constant spending, and so that our federal government can do the things that it's obligated to do, fulfill its obligations. And how do we get that moving once we're in Congress? I think the basis of that is starting conversations and being consistent with the Constitution.
Well, let's look at the Department of Energy. Who created it? Jimmy Carter. Executive order. Department of Education. Jimmy Carter. Both of those are big time minuses in my book. They're shutting down that out there now because they say the gasification plant doesn't meet the 100-year earthquake. Well, do those tanks in the ground meet the 100-year earthquake? What's more important, do we get that liquid into a solid, or do we let it get to the river? This is the common sense that we got to get back to DC. So nobody's brought up the fact that those tanks in the ground don't meet that 100-year earthquake either. Have we had that 100-year earthquake, for crying out loud? This is what they're doing. These agencies are stymieing our ability to clean up Hanford and to prosper as a farmer out here. The White Bluff Splatter Pot, how many of you heard of that? U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They're trying to take my right away to farm. because of a plant that they say is its own identity, and yet we did a DNA analysis and there's no difference between it and any other white blood, or any other bladder pod within our state and the 2 bordering states. But they won't recognize our study because it wasn't done by an official agency. That's our government today. Defund the Department of Energy, defund the Department of Education.
Any more questions? Oh, okay. Jamie Wheeler. I wonder what this question could be about. Okay, guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how important are private property rights to you? So this should be quick because it's just a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, you guys go. 10.
Is 11 part of the 10?
You stole that from Spinal Tap. This one goes up to 11.
10.
10.
10. Private property rights are at the very core of our nation, absolutely a 10.
10.
Okay, you made it easy on us.
That was a very good question.
And there's more coming, believe me.
It used to be life, liberty, and property. Our founders.
More questions? Okay.
So I'll do a nice follow-up to the last 2 questions. How are you going to reconcile states' rights, personal property rights, with how to eventually clean up Hanford, i.e. the plan was to send it to Yucca Mountain, which Obama illegally killed, but the state of Nevada doesn't want it. So how are you going to work to figure out what to do with all this waste sitting in Washington State?
Well, first off, again, I would, the way that I've always been as a legislator is I get my expertise from those of you that are on the ground, here at home, in the trenches, having to deal with these regulations that are being piled onto you. So what I would do in response to that is I'd go to my local experts here. And I've heard a couple different things, but one of them is just because Yucca was taken off the table by certain folks in power doesn't mean that we can't bring it back on. And in the meantime, we progress with our economic development plan and containment issues here, and I'd be supportive of making sure you got the funding to get it done.
A couple thoughts come to mind. Yucca is off the table for the time being under this administration. Whether it is permanently or not, that remains to be seen. There are other options as well. I believe there are salt mines in New Mexico that are on the table as a potential site. And there are other places that I think that can be looked at. Another thing to keep in mind too, the waste from the Columbia Generating Station, for instance. Waste is probably a misnomer for that. I see it as a resource, so maybe we don't want to carry.
Battery's dead.
Maybe we want to make sure that we can, as technology improves, that we can utilize that as the resource that it is. But the waste from management, we need to find a place, a permanent storage place. And I can tell you this, it's not the 177 tanks. Our batteries are dead.
Just ask my kids, I know how to yell. Okay. New Mexico does want it. New Mexico's working right now on building a waste repository. They see the shutdown of Yucca as an opportunity for their state. So that's one issue. Number 2, I agree, Yucca's not going anywhere. It's going to be there. And when Harry Reid is gone, and when Obama is gone, it will eventually be used for the purpose for which it was designed. Number 3, we can do another Jimmy Carter dig. It's not that the technology doesn't exist already to refine the waste and to reuse it. It's that President Carter made it illegal to do so. So as we can, and again, hate to bring up France, but they do get 70% of their electricity from nuclear over there, and they do recycle their waste. And we could learn from them, and we could get rid of another thing that Jimmy Carter did that was wrong, and get rid of the ban on recycling nuclear waste and using it again. So there are a number of opportunities, and they'll all be used.
Well, I do a lot of research. That's what I do in pastime. And I agree with this Holmquist, Senator Holmquist. There's a lot of opportunities here.
And we never look at the upside, we always look at the downside. And I think that Clint over here is correct that we need to address it ourselves, because those tanks start leaking while they keep having these studies out here. It's only us that are going to be the ones that are becoming ill and stuff. I did read an article at one time frame where they pulled the study off the tanks and they put some dye in there, but actually ended up in Eltopia, upstream versus downstream like everyone thought. So I think we need to take care of this issue ourselves and take it on, not for payment, don't misunderstand me, they have an obligation to pay, but we need to take the project on and come up with our own answer and not wait for government or any other entity to do so.
Okay. Basically, you know, I don't think I really know the answer. I kind of look for, you know, privatization, private ways that we could deal with something like this. One of the things I think about is regulation. Some of the regulations we have, maybe we can't do something because of a regulation which kind of prevents new technologies from coming forward that could maybe deal with something like this. So, you know, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Back in 2002, I was working with the Department of Ecology and the Department of Energy just as a concerned citizen about Hanford. And we were going through the throes with the FFTF and taking a look at all the waste out there, and I was trying to figure a way, you know, to, like these other gentlemen were saying, a resource. I was trying to figure out how maybe we could turn it into electricity. I mean, where else in America, where else in the world do we have the greatest minds and universities? I do think we kind of direct our educational, you know, endeavors in taking this horse behind the cart technology and putting the horse where it belongs.
The more I've looked into this, the more I realize that we do have the means to address the waste. We have smart people working with this. And then what I see is we have bureaucracy everywhere that's preventing it from happening. And like a lot of us have talked about, the federal government has to deal with its obligations, but I think how do we address the waste here in Washington? I think the state needs to start taking charge. The Congress, those of us that are in Congress, need to start backing the federal government out in terms of how much control we're exuding here, and let the people that know what they're doing locally take charge of the situation and get the bureaucracy out of it so we can stop the waste and get it done.
Well, we got waste. It's in the ground. We got a classification plan that's just about done. Finish it. I got a brother-in-law, a brother, and a son that all work out of Hampton. I'm in their ear all the time talking to them about what's going on out there. I got a lot of friends that went out there and worked. A lot of them quit and went back to their jobs out here because they're told to go hide. Because the more people they hire, the more money comes into Hampton. This is what we got to stop. If we want to get it cleaned up, we need to get a hold of that thing here in our own state. But our own Department of Ecology has adapted to Earth Charter. Earth Charter is a form of religion out of the UN. It worships Mother Earth as a living, breathing organism. See, we've got problems within our own state with our own Department of Ecology. So we the people, we got to start electing people in our state and our federal government that are going to take this task on. We got ground out there right now, they're burying the equipment that they work on this stuff. Why don't we just make this into a solid form, create containments, and bury it right back out there where it's at? Why are we shipping it everywhere? Let's go for common sense solutions, folks.
Test. Oh, good. We've got our microphone back. Awesome. Okay, this is going to be our last question. So does anybody have another question? One last question? Okay, in the back.
We're blessed to live in a region with a lot of resources, yet we are not achieving our true potential because we need more business-generated activity here. Our area is higher in unemployment than state and the national levels. My question is, what are you going to do as a member of Congress to bring back jobs to this community through more manufacturing, more trade, and other activity to get us back on track?
Well, that's a state issue right there, and it should remain in the state. But you're exactly right. We are shackled. Our industries are shackled. Look at our forest industry. We got pine beetle and spruce budworm. When I ran for lands commissioner, I learned a lot about that. As running for U.S. Senate, believe me, every race I ran, I learned. And I educated myself, and hopefully I'm educating the public. We got to unshackle our industries and let them run again. You know, everybody's saying drill, drill, drill. Yeah, drill, drill, drill. Let's start building some refineries. You know the last time we built a refinery in the United States of America? We can't refine our own fuel that we do bring out of the ground. We got to start this industrial engine back up, and it's the same thing I've been talking about. We got to get these agencies off our back. So the bills that I'm going to be introducing is to get rid of these agencies that were brought upon the American people without justification.
We have enormous resources in Washington State that should allow us to thrive. And the reason that we're not thriving, and the reason we're seeing this throughout the United States is because the federal government is involved in all these things. They're restricting constantly, and we can barely move. We've got to introduce bills to repeal the federal restrictions, the federal agencies. We have to stop voting for them. We have to stop playing the political games, and we have to start voting constitutional right here. Because it doesn't mean that all these issues that we face on a day-to-day basis should not be dealt with, but they should be dealt with on the state level so that our economies can thrive and we can restore prosperity to our state and to America.
Back in the year 2000, I was asked by the Limited League of Voters, Mr. Cross, what would you, from Vincennes County, what would you do to supplement the electrical grid in America, because there have been blackouts in California? And I said, well, and this is about energy to your point, that I would start the Department of Dole, Department of Lunar Energy, and to bring down the cost of power to industry, making competition more affordable for us with other nations. And well, finally a month ago in the Seattle Times, they said they're getting permits to do that out on the Sound. Finally getting to do that. And I'm also concerned about fossil fuel. I consider it a cancer, a scourge, and a plague. And you can't call me a tree hugger because I used to plant the trees and I used to put them out there on fire and log them. And I've been working on, and a lot of us out here have been working on propulsion through magnet generation, which would retire fossil fuel. And I think that energy is one of those keys, and regulation to making business more affordable.
Well, I'm going to kind of talk about something a little different. The problem we have, everything, all issues are actually tied to economics. Everything we do is economics, pretty much. We benefit somehow for doing whatever it is we do. So what I'm going to say is that we have an entity, the Federal Reserve, which is creating money out of thin air. I've saved up my money. I save up money. For some reason, I'm crazy and I save money. And I'm thinking, pretty soon I'll have a lot of money. I'll feel rich, but I just never feel richer. And I'm realizing that it's because this entity is creating more money, so my money is not worth what it used to be worth or what I work. So ultimately, what I believe we have to do, I don't know if this is the answer, is we have to, obviously we have to get rid of the Federal Reserve, but people need to understand the concept of saving money, because if we don't understand that concept, because if we save money, prices will go down. I've been working retail for a very long time, and prices haven't gone down. I've seen a candy bar go up from 50 cents, now they're 99 cents. You know, if you want to get, yeah, you know, I have silver dimes at home. I could buy a gallon of gas with that. I mean, today I could still technically buy a gallon of gas with that, but now you got to pay like $3 a gallon or $4 a gallon. So you know, if you want to get jobs, you know, we have to stop creating money out of thin air, really.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but he's getting a lot better. To answer your question, Victor, I totally agree. And my sister and everyone told me not to bring this subject up. It's an ugly subject, okay? But our country has been taken over. That's the truth of it. That's the ugly truth of it. They stole our banking system. They control our press in 1917. The CFR bought up the press. They control what we listen to, what we hear. They got control of the IRS in 1917 also. Anything related to money, we're controlled by a monetary system. To answer your question in the back there, sir, I believe that what we need to do on this project here, and I've promoted it with Governor Inslee, Governor Gregoire, and Governor Locke, is we need to make this a state project. The monies are currently available for us, and I've told them for the last 3 administrations, I know where the money's at, but I brought a prop with me back there, a football, because I was going to kind of use Clint again here on the demonstration. The problem with an idea or a thought process is after you give the idea away, you lose control of it. And I'm almost certain, I don't know a lot about football, I'm almost certain that if you lost control of the football, you wouldn't have those 3 diamond rings over there. So I think that what we need to do is put this project in. The money is here locally, we can control it locally, and we need to put in these thousands of jobs. When I was a kid, I watched this entire area build up. We need to go back to what made America great. And by doubling the size of this project, we'll offset the trade imbalances for export, and will also help the United States and the world, because what we will do, we'll be feeding millions of people out there, and I honestly feel if we put our time and effort into putting this project in, we can actually get a result out of it.
Felix, that's a fantastic question, because it really ties up everything we've been talking about here. Because as I hear your question, what I really hear is, how do you create a job? First of all, we know you can't buy jobs. Federal government can't spend more to make jobs, because that goes against everything that we've all told you about here, that we've got to bring the budget under control. So we can't do more government spending. So how do you create jobs? Well, I happen to know because I've created them. I came here and I started to practice from scratch. I didn't move jobs from other firms because I brought a new product to the market that nobody else was providing. A special, unique legal expertise. My clients are around the country, and I bring dollars into this economy from around the country that other people weren't bringing here before. I've got other local clients, as a matter of fact, who've done the same thing. They start off with a great product, and they deliver it around the country, and again, they bring dollars to our economy voluntarily, not from federal payments, but from clients who value their services. So we know to create a job, you've got to have a good product. Number 2, this is where we start tying into the questions. What do you need? You need educated people to fill those jobs. And we've talked a bit about the education system, how there's so much room for improvement and bringing control for that back to the states. But number 3, a product, educated people. What else do you need? You need faith. Now we think about faith as being a religious freedom, but faith has a lot of other meanings, right? You can put your faith in a lot of things. In fact, we know that when the government sells bonds, they're backed by what? The full faith and credit of the United States government. How do we create faith in a business system? When I came here, I sweated. When should I hire my first employee? Could I work harder? Could I work harder? Could I save money? Eventually, you've got to have faith in the business system to know that it's going to be okay to make that hire, because that's a scary thing. It's a leap of faith to say, do I have enough money to make payroll to not just provide for my family, to provide for somebody else's family too? when this president took office, right before he took office, he said he was going to stir up the pot a little bit, you know? That doesn't create faith in a business community. I would suggest to you, it's my firm belief that as long as this president is in office, there is a chilling effect on the economy because he's eliminated a lot of the faith that people have in basic business governance in this country. Business thrives on certainty, it shrinks and does not grow when there is a spirit of confusion. And that's what we have going on right here in this administration, because nobody knows what new taxing idea he's going to do next. You know, we think there's going to be these cap and trade rates that he's going to toss out any day now from one of his agencies. This is not the faithful environment that people need to be able to grow jobs. So as Congressman, what can we do to help these three things? Well, it's not our job to pick the products. The market will take care of that. We can improve the educational system by having, putting control back in the school, in the local areas, and let them educate people better. And third, we can allow or create an environment where business can thrive by being stable, by creating some stability that hasn't been there. What do we do to create stability as congresspeople? Well, we can work well with others. We can eliminate some of the polarization that's out there where people don't know what's going to happen. We can create a stable tax code. We've been operating on a tax code that gets renewed every couple of years. We haven't had a stable tax code for a while. How about passing a budget? All bills for spending are supposed to originate in the House. We're all going to be in the House. How about we do that and we find a way to work with people across the aisle to fulfill our constitutional responsibility to have a budget? These are all the things that we can do as members of Congress to increase stability, which will allow jobs to grow and solve the problem that you asked, Felix. Thanks.
I represented the 15th district when I was in the state legislature. Part of that district included Tuckahoe County, the city of Goldendale. Do you remember when the aluminum plant closed a few years ago? You couldn't give a house away in Goldendale for many years. So I know what joblessness looks like. It's not a pretty sight. It takes a long time to recover from that. Business needs a couple things. The most important thing that business needs, they need to attract investment, because let's face it, what drives business creation? Profit. That ugly word that a lot of people don't like to use. I love it. People have to make money in a business venture. How do they do that? From our government, what can we provide to give them that? Predictability. In two ways that are most important. In our tax code, people have to feel at least confident that for the foreseeable future, there will be no surprises that they're going to put into jeopardy their investment. Simple as that. Or they're not going to make that investment. We have right now a lot of money supposedly sitting offshore or sitting in people's accounts waiting for investment because there is not predictability. They need to have it. Second area, and I know a little bit about this because I directed a state agency. People need predictability as it pertains to regulation. They need to know what kind of rules are going to be coming out, whether it's Olympia or Washington, D.C., so that they can plan, they can predict, they know the field, they know what they're dealing with when they make that investment and take that risk. Those are the two things that the government needs to provide in order to grow jobs. Without those things, it's just not going to happen. So that's what I'm going to be all about when I get to Washington, D.C., is predictability.
And Felix, I don't think you were here for the opening comments, but I got really excited when I got to talk about our business climate and economic development. One of my personal passions in the Washington State Senate as the chair of Commerce and Labor Committee is private sector job creation. And believe it or not, I have to say private sector sometimes to our colleagues. Most of them on the other side of the aisle that do not understand, they think a government job's as good as a private sector job, and they don't realize the connection that the private sector job's paying for the government job. So private sector job creation, I think, is a solution to so many of our problems, and if we could just get everyone focused on it. We've heard it mentioned, predictability and stability. I've got that proven track record to improve our business climate, even from a super minority status. I was able to reach across the aisle and get historic workers' comp reform adopted. So that hits one thing, regulations. So many of our employers don't know what's going to come from their government the next day. There's this huge question and a dark cloud, and they know they're in compliance today, but 2 hours later they could be out of compliance because that's that kind of relationship that they have with their state government. So we need to work on regulations such as Obamacare, by the way, that is a huge burden on not only our taxpayers from a personal perspective, but also the employers. There's an employer tax involved with that as well. A big part of this too is the tax code and needing to reform our tax code. What's driving our tax code right now? It's our growth of government. And so a big part of this is getting our get in control of our spending. We've got a huge spending issue. We got to get a balanced budget amendment so we can stop the bleeding and etc. Bottom line, folks, I've been honored by just last week by the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, for having a 100% voting record and being a guardian of our small businesses. So you can count on me not to only stand up for your existing businesses, but it doesn't matter if you're small or big. What's good for Goliath should be good for David. And I want to go to battle and improve our economy, and you can count on me, and I've got the track record to back it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Janaea. And let's have a round of applause for all these people who came to share their names. To a close, except for that I do have Chuck Mossman would like to make an announcement.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm Chuck Monosmith, Chairman of the Benton County Republican Party. And June 18th, all of these people these candidates that are standing in front of you will be at the Richland High School auditorium for this same question and answer session. Except it's going to be a little different. Karina, you did a great job. But the moderator on June 18th will be Senator Mike Hewitt from Walla Walla. And the questions will come from the 7 newspapers, 4 radio stations, and 2 television stations that are in the 4th Congressional District. Their editorial boards will be preparing the questions for these candidates to answer. And it will be open to the public, June 18th, 6:30 p.m., Richland High School Auditorium. I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. One other thing I'd like to add before we close this evening is we do have other individuals running for office in this room, and so if you'll raise your hand, I'll let you announce who you are and what you're running for.
I'm Brenda Shelton. I'm the Benton County Auditor, and I do not have an opponent. But I will be on the ballot, and there is always the possibility of write-in candidates, and so please vote for me.
Okay. There you go.
Matt Cleveland, I can run for the county auditor also. Washington State House.
Washington State House, I have a Democrat opponent who wants $15 minimum wage for this community, and he also wants to create this community as a center for marijuana tourism. For those who may not know, I'm Mary Hitler.
And we have one more.
My name is Mary Phillips, and I'm a candidate for Benton County Assessor. I've been with the county for 13 years and with local government for more than 2 years before that. So I look forward to speaking further.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, well, that concludes our evening. Thank you very much, and I'm sure the candidates would have material on the pool table up here, and I'm sure they take your questions if you have additional ones. Thank you.